as a hiring manager, I have learned over the years that just because you post a job on your website doesn't mean people have seen it, right?
Yeah.
So I have hired or placed job advertising at like historically Black colleges or in female groups or what, and you have to make a concerted effort to make your job available out there if you want more diversity in your hiring or more diversity in your candidate pool, at least. So you have to do that concerted effort. I think there are jobs out there for sure for women, but what I want to say to every woman listening that has self-doubt, stop being so self-doubtful. None of us know what we're doing. We're doing the best that we can. You just have to try.
Welcome back to the Bombshell Business Podcast. I'm your host, Amber Hurdle, and I am really happy about today's conversation that we're about to have. When I saw this person kind of come through into my world, I immediately emailed Amy and was like, I want to talk to her. So as you all know, I don't really pick our guests. Amy handles all of that. And then I'm just delighted to meet all the cool people that get to come on here. But there's something about this that I was just like, so many things that are important to me. And I think needs to be a part of a conversation that we can all have together. So let me just dive right in. Y'all know how I do. There's no announcements today. Let's just get to it. Let me tell you about our guest. So the daughter of immigrants from Nicaragua, Martha came to Miami when she was 10 years old with her parents and learned to speak English. Her dad, who saw the value of her studying math and science, encouraged Martha to study both subjects, and that alone just gave me the goosies. Go, Dad. And as a result, she earned her MBA and headed directly into the male-dominated tech world. Long time ago, I did a blog post about that. We'll have to maybe stick that in the show notes. Because of her dad's encouragement to know no boundaries, she now has 20 plus years of B2B marketing experience in SaaS, semiconductor, networking, and network security at startups, private and public companies. As a top executive, she has successfully led through 20 plus mergers and acquisitions. Holy cow! Including managing several integrations and acquisition exits. Prior to joining her present position at Talru, Martha held senior leadership roles in marketing at RigUp, which is now WorkRise, and Enverus. I might have said that incorrectly. Both companies have reached unicorn status. If you're not impressed by this point, I don't know what I can say to make you be impressed, but welcome to the show, Martha.
Hi, it's lovely to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited. So we've got a lot to unpack today, but can we just first go straight to the jugular and say, not only are you female, but you're a Latina female in the tech industry. What's that like? Can we just start there?
It's definitely weird. And I say it's weird, or I guess atypical. Probably 2019. I decided that I needed a Hispanic female executive coach because I felt like I was stalled in my career. And I was like, I want someone that's worked in tech, that's been an operator before. I couldn't find one. Wow. I wish I was joking, but I spent like 6 months looking for someone. I've got a bunch of connections on LinkedIn. I reached out to everyone that I know. And then I was like, oh, that's when I started to realize like, there's not very many of me out there. You know what I mean?
There's not. That's why I was like, oh, speaking of unicorns, let's have her on the show. Because I think it's like, if you cannot find the person, then you must become the person. Like if you're ready at that level and there's nobody above you, then that's God, the universe, whatever you want to say, saying like, you're it, sis, that's you. So how are you leading in this space? Like, how are you becoming or acting as that example, as that mentor, whether you're interacting with other, like specifically Latina, but just using that power of yours for anyone?
Yeah. So I guess I'll talk about like my transition from then until now, because I think at that point in my career, I kept trying to be something that I wasn't, in the sense that I was sitting in executive rooms or board meetings and I wanted to act like a white male. But I I didn't have the language to articulate that. But that's what I realized. So then I went on this quest of like, I really need to find Hispanic female leaders that are now executive coaches. I didn't find one, but through that quest is when I realized like, okay, trailblazing is hard and it's not for the faint of heart. And I'm human, right? So I don't know what I'm doing in the sense of I give it my best every day. And I have made a concerted effort. I've always wanted to reach back and make sure that I was empowering women of color, being one. But now I really make a concerted effort to focus on that, to drive conversation around that, to talk about DEI and not just as a checkbox because everyone wants to say that. Diversity of thought, regardless of your background or diversity of background, is super important for driving innovation forward and companies forward. And so now I don't know, do my best to help move the needle on that.
Yeah, totally agree. And I love now it's, we always like to add on new letters to everything. And so now I'm seeing a lot of it being DEIB. And I love the B part specifically so I don't know, I'm going to just say it and hope I don't get myself in trouble this way because I was raised in Southern California. So none of my friends look the same. It wasn't like black or white or Mexican and Caucasian. Like it was everyone. And we had a variety of I had Korean and Vietnamese and Japanese and Guatemalan and Mexican and Brazilian. I mean, I could go on and on. So for me, what is normal and what I need to feel like, oh, we're cooking is to have lots of different faces. But diversity, equity, inclusion, unfortunately, in the Caucasian world has been politicized. And it's so frustrating. So once you add that B on, it's like, okay, you know what we're doing here, guys? You know what? This is not political. This is about creating an environment of belonging where everyone feels like they belong. It doesn't matter what color your skin is, what your ethnic background is. It doesn't matter if you're neurodivergent or neurotypical. It doesn't matter what your sexuality is. Like we're going to create a place where you can come plug in your gifts to the bigger picture and belong. So where is it in that journey where you were like, I'm the odd man out and there's really not a seat for me here? Or what happened that made you say like, this is important?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll be completely vulnerable here. I had several encounters where my boss, typically a CEO, would say, I need you to behave more like insert name here. I'm going to use the word Scott. And Scott is not a real person, but it was always a white man. And I mean, I'm going to be honest with you, with my executive coach at the time, I remember being in the Wells Fargo building, crying in this office, like, I'll never be like this. And we had this aha, like sometimes it takes a light bulb moment. And it was this light bulb moment, like, of course, I'm never going to communicate like Scott. I'm not 6'2". I'm not white. I'm not a man. Like there is no way that I'm going to communicate like Scott or behave like Scott and why should I keep trying? So there was this point of like this paradigm shift where I decided, you know what, I'm going to reframe this. Like, here's who I am. Here's my background. Here's what I can talk to you about. Here's what I know. And that's where I started to really embrace my story, which sounds sad, right? I struggle with the fact that like, maybe there was shame there around that, because I wasn't fitting in this executive box, if you will. But now it's really empowered me. And I think that my team now, for example, at Talroo, there's almost 20 of us, and they come from different walks of life and different backgrounds and different ages. But now I figured out like what that belonging really means, because everyone's opinion matters. And there's a high degree of psychological safety, regardless of where you come from, right? And what color your skin tone is. And not that that stuff isn't important, right? Like those identifiers, I don't only want to be known as a Latina woman in tech, right?
Of course.
But those identifiers are important. But you help build psychological safety when you have that true belonging. And then some of that whole politicized DEI thing that you were mentioning, it kind of goes by the wayside. People aren't like, oh, this Black woman said, you know what I mean?
Right.
It changes.
Am I allowed to say that out loud? Like,
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you're not like that you also acknowledge like, okay, I'm bringing this to the table. It's a part of my story. It's a part of my identity, but it is not my identity all encompassing. Cause I'm not a woman in business. I'm a business owner. Like I'm an advisor. I am all those things. But like, yeah, my point of reference is from a female perspective. There's value to that. There is a feminine energy. There's value to that. When I think about like, there's oftentimes where I was the only Caucasian at like a birthday party. It was everyone else there was Mexican, and that was very normal for me. And since I'm Sicilian, what I've found is like that passion and that sense of community and that sense of family and food and festivity. Like I always have that in common with that particular culture. And that's something that you could bring to the table that maybe a straight lace white person doesn't necessarily have. They could, but maybe not. So it's just put it all in a blender and like, let's have an awesome fruit salad that we're serving up every single day. So let's go back to your story, because I'm pretty unabashed about like, I got knocked up at 16. I got some grit. This is why I'm psychotic about branding, because I had to brand myself. What's up? Like, I don't even apologize for it. So it seems like, what was it that took you from shame to embracing that?
Struggle, a lot of struggle. I mean, I think you can relate to that, right? I think in general, being a child of immigrant parents, you're gritty, you have a really hard work ethic. Immigrants are like, oh, when you feel like you're tired and you've worked too much, you haven't. Work harder. Like that's how I was raised. And let me tell you that there's a lot of benefits in that, and there are some definite downsides.
Right.
But I think a lot of struggling and a lot of just like getting exhausted and finally being like, you know what, this is my story. This is who I am. This is what I can bring to the table, and finding places that value that. And doesn't mean that every place that I could potentially work, I should go work, right? So I read, I think it was like a meme or an article recently that it was like, okay, a bottle of water at the grocery store is $1. A bottle of water at the gas station is $3. And at the airport, it's $8. Find your airport.
Right.
You know what? Yeah. Like, where is it that you're the most valuable? Yeah. And I mean, it seems silly and trite, but
it's not. It's so true.
Yeah. So that's what I finally started embracing it. But let me just say, I've embraced it, but it doesn't mean it's easy. It's work every day still. Does that make sense?
That's what separates us from the commoners. And I'm just going to say it, because like, if you're not hustling, then I'm sorry, you will never be at the level that you're capable of. And I'm against hustle culture where it's like grind all the time, never take care of yourself. But if you're just playing it safe and you're never pushing yourself beyond where your comfort zone is, you're never going to play at the level that you can. And so you did that. And you once asked a supervisor, I'm looking at some of the notes that we have on you, for a 30% pay raise. Sister, that is like, just for a woman alone, let alone a woman of color, that's a pretty ballsy move. Talk me through that.
Yeah, I can talk you through that. So I was frustrated at the time because I was running all of marketing and hadn't gotten an increase in a year and a half, almost 2 years. And when I started, I was an individual contributor. And then I was a director of marketing and running all of marketing. And they hadn't come to me and offered me.
They gave you a title and more responsibility without the pay to go with it. Oh, that doesn't happen to women at all, ever.
Exactly. And, for a long time, I was happy to do it. I will say for about, 9 months. And then I thought, what am I doing here? Like, I have a really incredible work ethic. And so I went and got another job offer because I was like, I'm only going to play this card once. Right. But it's either going to work or it's going to bomb, as far as like, so I had another job offer and I walked in with that job offer and I was like, I need you to pay me at least this much, if not more. And that, we had the conversation and they were extremely apologetic. And I'm so sorry, this was overlooked, this, that, the other. But that's when I realized, like, we have to be selfish with our careers. No one else is thinking about your salary, your responsibility, your title, the way you think about it. And you're the only one in that driver's seat. So if you're the main character of your story, make it the main character of your story. Like I said, it is difficult. You have to challenge yourself every day. I do things that I'm scared of every day. I was in a meeting earlier where I was about to say, this might be a stupid idea. And then I thought, no, you don't say that. Right. So like, it's not like I've reached this like pinnacle of like, okay, now everything is hunky dory and I'm golden every day. No. But you just have to constantly remind yourself and push yourself and do things when you're scared. I mean, I'm sure you can relate to that as a business owner, right? Like, you just operate scared, but
every day.
Yeah, but I mean, that's part of being brave. If you think about it that way, like you're scared, but you're also being brave. And that's the only way you can do things that are great. Like
Yeah.
greatness doesn't come from safety and comfort zones.
Everyone is like, oh, the economy and recession and blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, I deal with employer branding, which is important in all seasons, because even in a down economy, if you're on a hiring freeze, you better keep the good ones. Otherwise, you're screwed. So, there's the onboarding and everything. But as I think about that every day, I'm just like, I'm not participating. Like, I didn't participate in COVID. Don't get me wrong. I participated. I wore my mask. I stayed at home, all that kind of stuff. But I didn't participate in the frenzy. I just kept going. I'm like, all right, well, I don't know, but I've showed this 100 times. I've had this on my monitor since COVID. How? Can't do it that way? Cool. That didn't work. How can we do it? And asking that question. I want to call back.
So since you showed me a Post-it note, I just have to show you this. This is mine.
I love you so much.
And I've had it on here. I rewrite it because it gets grungy. Because I eat at my desk and stuff, but I've had it on here for years.
I love it. Don't ask permission. For those listening, not on YouTube. Mine says house, her says don't ask for permission. But I think I'm going to put another one, because I think as women especially, and of course, sometimes we have to generalize. There will be a woman listening like, I don't do that. But in general, and I've coached hundreds of women over the past decade, and certainly have fed thousands of women, if you're going to be the main character in your life, then be the main character.
Oh,
that is powerful. And just, I think I can't remember if it's Seed of the Soul or which book it is, that talks about we're all watching our lives in a movie theater, but my movie and exactly everything, how everything is, if we were hanging out today in person, my movie would be a different version than your movie, because you're looking at it, you're the main character, I'm the main character. Our, supporting cast will appear differently. We'll have different opinions on what shapes those characters. I really, really think that's a strong takeaway for you to say that. So when you walk into that negotiation, it's not like, oh, well, my bills have gone up and I want to send my son to soccer camp. They don't care about that. They care about the value that you give to them and what will be taken away from that experience of theirs, which is the business, if you walk away. That's all they care about. And that's not wrong for them to care about that. You are definitely a human being. You are definitely an important piece of the pie, but you're also replaceable. You're there to do a job. So when you go in and you negotiate and you came in with your, oh, and by the way, they see my value over here. How about you? That's a different conversation than the economy's shifting. I need a rate, not pour me it, but I have value and you're going to pay me.
Right. And it is a value exchange, but it's also, if they're not meeting your value exchange, you have to have alternatives. Right.
Right. And you are willing to walk away. That's hard.
It is, but when you're making more money, it makes it easier.
That's right. Or looking for a better culture, or, whatever that looks like. So now you broke a glass ceiling as a Latina in technology. So again, we have multiple layers here. In Austin, that's there's Silicon Valley, Austin. When you're thinking about tech hubs, that's a pretty big one. So what was that like, and how did it make you feel inside while you were going through that transition and you had that moment of oh, I've just leveled way the heck up?
Yeah. I mean, part of it was luck, right? My dad's an engineer. So when I was 11, I'd be like, hey, I want to go ride my bike. And he's like, no, you're going to set up a wireless router today. Remember, 1991, right? Dad, can we go ride bikes? No, today we're going to set up a local area network, because this is the early 90s. And this is and after you did that or helped him build whatever computer or learned about Ethernet, then you could go ride your bike. So some of it was just luck of being born into the family that I was born into. It made me not scared of technology. And then I realized early on, people in tech make a lot of money. I am not by nature an engineer. I could not code something. You want me to, make you a program to do whatever, I'll get fired very quickly. But I was able to figure out my people skills, the tech skills, and then, go from there. I graduated shortly after 9/11 and the economy was really soft. And this was actually crap moment. I was going to say something else, but I'll keep it clean. Because I thought I was going to work at Cisco Systems. I was interning there and, they were hiring great. They were like, we're laying people off and we're rescinding offers. And I didn't know what rescind was. I was 21 years old. Like, what? So because I come from immigrant blood, if you will, the hustle in me was like, I have to find a job before I graduate. So I started at a startup and I had no idea what startups were. But they've made my career, right? So like that giant shift where I could have sat down and just been depressed, sad, discouraged, whatever. I was like, I've got to do something with this. And now I've worked at a lot of high growth startups. I've been a part of a lot of mergers and acquisitions. And I'm always grateful for those things in your life that seem like a door is being shut on you, but instead it's really like putting you on the path where you need to go.
Yeah.
So something happened when I finally realized like, I'm never going to be Scott or Peter or insert name here. I started to see my value even more. And when you come from a place of security within yourself, you're even more willing to face other fears. So up until that point in my career, don't get me wrong, I did things that scared me all the time, but I was coming from a place of fear. And now I come from a place of empowerment for the most part. Doesn't mean I never get scared, but I'm like, I know what value I have. I've proven myself, right? I've also been doing this for 20 years. So know that if you're out there listening, you're like, oh my God, this is my first job ever. You may not feel that way, and that's okay. We all pay our dues, if you will.
Right.
But I come from a different place now, and it's been super helpful. And honestly, I'm just in awe that I went from surviving to thriving, if you will. But there is a whole gamut that I don't know if everyone has to go through that, but I can talk to you about my journey. And I felt like I needed to go through all those things to get to where I am today.
Well, if we can unpack, because, there's what I say that I do for a living is I help leaders and organizations define and position their value to maximize whatever results they're trying to get, influence and results. And so a lot of women have an extremely hard time defining their value. So I'm going to put you on the spot, if that's okay. And just, can you articulate, like, what is your value? How did you go from there to there? What are those characteristics that positioned you for success?
Sure. So I think I'm naturally gritty because I'm a first generation. I had to figure out a bunch of things by myself. I didn't have anyone holding my hand, and I didn't realize how that would set me up for success in the career world. To your point, right? I'm doing something, I don't have the representation that I always wanted as a female of color. But then I realized like, oh, okay, I don't need it because I've done it. It doesn't mean that I wouldn't want it, but like there was a point where I was like, I really need this. And then I'm like, no, I don't actually. I can learn so much from so many different people, and I could just continue to kind of blaze this trail. So I think there was a lot of that. And then really understanding, again, I mean, comparison is the thief of joy. Yes. So there was so much of my career where I compared myself to white male executives or Caucasian male executives, because that's what I saw and that's what I thought I had to do. But through my MBA program, I got that card. Listen, getting an MBA was very difficult, but I wanted to have that card in my back pocket in case I ever needed to play it. It wasn't because I was like, I love learning. Let me be clear. It wasn't like, I can't wait to go, spend 40 hours a week on school. No. I got that card in case I needed to play it. And then I slowly it evolved to where I realized this is my value. I can understand the intersection of technology and human behavior, which is what marketing can do. And because of how I grew up, I had to really understand psychology and how humans work, right? Think about not knowing the language in a country where my entire family moved together from Nicaragua to the United States. So it's not like we had mentors here or people that were like, you know what, this is what you do. But that formed my special sauce, if you will, unknowingly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. And, I just got out of conference season. I'm home. But what I've continued to say, and I'm going to continue to say into 2023 from the stage, is if you are not hitting an emotional connection in your marketing, you are not going to grow. Hard stop. And so when you think about the natural gifts of women, and before I finish this, let me just take a quick time out. To my bombshell boys who are listening, you've heard me say this before. we see and support women to the benefit of all, not to the detriment of men. And I will be the first person to say that I have had countless white male mentors and allies who have grown my career, sometimes even more than my female counterparts. So none of this is a bash to you. Please know that you are super valuable. We have a different perspective, which we're going to celebrate in this episode. So women naturally have more of a understanding of human behavior. We tend to be a little more empathetic. We tend to notice what's going on in another human being, despite whatever's going on inside of us. We're sensitive to that. And that's not to say that men don't, but I just think we have a heightened awareness. So I love that you bring that to the table, and then it's mixed with the tech. It's like science and psychology, having a baby. Can I ask a question? You're confident. I'm confident. And I was just sitting in the hot tub last night with my branding photographer / super great friend of a gajillion years, Jessica. She's been on the show before. And she said something about just like, obviously I know all my weaknesses, and I don't like using that word, but for the sake of lazy language, but I inherently, like, I know who I am, and I know what's great about me, and I know what's not great about me, and what I need to bubble wrap. And like, nobody can budge me on that. And I so see that in you. And I think that's why I was so excited to I'm like, let's get her on the show. Do you scare people?
I have scared people. I don't know if I do regularly anymore. I feel like I've smoothed out some of my edges, but sure. I think if you're very certain of yourself and you know your strengths and weaknesses, for lack of a better term, I think that can be very intimidating to people, for sure.
Yeah. And how do you manage that? Because you're obviously like a warm, soft inside, helper, but also badass. And so if people don't get that gooey center of you, and all they see is the super self-assured person, how do you get them to truly see you beyond that confidence?
I think it depends on the situation, right? But I think at work, I approach things from a place of curiosity, and I try not to come in guns blazing, for lack of a better term, right? So I try to approach things with curiosity. And then I've also, my sister taught me this, because speaking of badasses, my God, she might intimidate me sometimes. She's the youngest of 3. So, and I know that birth order doesn't follow every family, but our family is if you looked up birth order, it's young, it's to a T, they wrote the book for us. So she's the youngest, and she's not everyone's gonna like you, and I'm fine with it, and I'm I really struggle with that. But she's taught me you know what, not everyone's gonna like me, but also, does everybody like everybody? No, no. That's okay. But she's taught me a lot in that arena, because
yeah. And then when you're leading a team, you want them to like you, because that's advantageous for you to get things done. But also that's who you're with most of the time. You want to have community. And so when you do come in and you're us, if they don't see the side of you that cares so deeply for them, and you're going to let them borrow your confidence, and you're going to use your confidence to tear down walls and get them the tools and resources that they need. It's I'm a savage warrior for you. It's not about you having to bow down to me and my power. It's about me using my power to then empower you, because that's what a leader does. Now speaking of, you had to do something really hard in your career. Again, female perspective, I love having these conversations, but you had to lay off 70% of your staff at one point in your career. Mm-hmm. I've had to lay people, not easy, furloughs, all that kind of stuff. Can you walk us through that? How did you do that?
Yeah, there were some tears, for sure. So it was March of 2020. There was this tiny thing called a pandemic, and I don't know if you've heard.
That little thing.
Yeah, that little old pandemic thing. But I was in oil and gas at the time, and oil went negative, which broke my brain. I have an MBA, I'm reasonably intelligent, but I was what? It's negative? You would have to pay people to take your oil? What? Yeah, I had to lay off 70% of my team. Leading up to that point, what they don't know is that I was negotiating and fighting for what if we move this person into a customer success role? Or what if we I did everything I possibly could. I spent probably 6 weeks of long sleepless nights to try to understand like how many people could be saved, if you would, by putting into a different role, this, that, the other. And at the end of the day, 70% of the team had to go, which was fair. But I'll be completely honest with you. That was the reason why I left that job. After that, my mental headspace for being there, I just knew I wasn't going to be a rock star, in the sense, like, I'm someone that's super driven and super dedicated, and that's just who I am. I want to wake up every day thinking about like, how are we going to solve these problems? How are we going to do it together? And after that, I couldn't overcome it. So that's why I left that. And they were upset because they were like, wait, your job was saved. And I was like, yeah, but after 6 weeks of the mental gymnastics to try to figure out, you're impacting people's lives. And I take that very, very seriously. I couldn't get past it, just couldn't get past it.
But I love how you modeled that. It's like, okay, obviously there's going to be layoffs. This is an unavoidable situation based on where we are in the P&L. But in the market and all these extraneous circumstances, but your first point was not, well, how are we going to let these people down? Which is maybe step 2. Your first thing was like, there's that curiosity that you bring to the table. How can we look at this differently? How can we potentially put them in another spot to save them? And then once that didn't happen, how did you communicate this to your team? Like, that must've been a gut punch for you. Like, even though it wasn't happening to you, like, you're having to tell people that their livelihood is no longer being supported by the company that they trusted.
Totally. So we were able to save some people's jobs, which was really nice. A crappy silver lining. And then unfortunately, it was all over Zoom. Like, this was last week of March of 2020. And so I'd laid people off before, but never in this
mass
time. It felt super impersonal. Now I feel like I get to know people. Like, I totally feel like you and I could go hang out. We can have a drink. I feel like I know you. But back then, I mean, think about back then, it's only 2 years ago, but it's,
girl, that was a long 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was a long 2 years ago. And I
got some new wrinkles and some new sparklies in my hair.
It felt so impersonal. I definitely teared up and my voice was cracking, but I could, I was like, I told them the reality of the business. This is where we are. Like, we lost almost 2,000 customers overnight. Like, this is, what we're doing, but it was awful. I mean, I still think about it sometimes because you're affecting people's livelihood,
But you showed your humanity. Like, you weren't like, turn in your stuff, you're gone, bye-bye. Like, you actually showed empathy and walked them through.
And I told all of them, like, if you want help with your resume, or if like I can help connect you. And I mean, I always mean those things, right? Even with my team, regardless of where I work, I'm always like, guys, when you are ready, or you feel like you're ready to move on, or there's something that you want, please come talk to me. Like, I don't want to be surprised by like, hey, can you chat? This is my 2-week notice.
Yeah.
Like, let's talk about what is it that you want? I can help get you there.
Right.
You're a happier employee if you feel like you're
not held hostage.
Right. But that you can have that type of conversation, and it's a safe space. Like, let's do it. Back to belonging and psychological safety.
Yeah. I think that's really important. I'd love to drive that home because, I've worked with some of the most talented, like, people. I'm just like, how do I get to be your leader? Like, you're so ridiculously talented, and it's a blessing for me, but it was same as you. It's very important for me, for anyone who reports to me, to know that, like, this isn't jail. I'm not going to be mad at you if you decide that, like, if there's not a spot for you to grow into here with me or somewhere in this company that I can help you get to, even if you have to leave my department or obviously now my company, then let's talk about what do we need to do to set you up to get there? Like, what type of assignments do you need to have? What new skills do you need to have? And I know there's people watching going, I'm not going to like train somebody so they can walk out the door. But if you're investing in people while they're with you, they're going to invest back into you. Even if one day they're going to walk out the door, like, they're going to work twice as hard because they know that you have their back no matter what.
Totally. So people will care about you as soon as they know you care about them.
Yeah.
And the world is such a small place. I don't like it when, let's say, you leave a company and they just act like you're dead. Like, you guys are going to run into each other again. You were working together all those hours, and you didn't die. Like, you didn't die. You're going to run into each other again. You might as well make the best of it. Right. And I think it's like having those conversations.
And that is your ongoing network. Like, who you used to work with is part of that greater network of resources and people you can tap into. It should just never be ugly. Like, it doesn't have to be ugly unless it's an ugly situation, which, hopefully it's not. But if it's just like, I'm ready to do something different in my career, I'm ready to be challenged more, I'm ready to maybe take a shift and do this other role that isn't even a part of this company, or I want to try a new industry, like, why is that a bad thing? How could that ever be a bad thing that somebody wants to continue to elevate in their life? Like, it's just makes my brain hurt.
Well, and to what you do for what you do, those people will be your employee brand advocates forever, even if they don't work there. But they'll be like, "What? Go and work there with so and so because she's going to help lift you up in your career." And like that word of mouth marketing, if you will, it is the highest ROI and not the easiest to get, but like it's invaluable. And so that's what you want,
Yeah. In Employer Brand Central, we have 4 sections of the employee life cycle. The employer brand loop is what we call it. And it starts with the attraction phase. Obviously, everybody's interested in talent attraction. Everybody wants to hire. And then they're like, that's what employer branding's for. And I'm like, that is just the beginning. Then you have the onboarding, the first 90 days, which half people just fail at, which is why 30% of people walk out the door in the first 90 days. Then you have engage, which is like the majority. And then there's offboarding. And people are like, why do you have a whole section for offboarding? And it's exactly what you just said. It's exactly what you just said. The people who are leaving you are the people out there talking about you. The people who are leaving you still can refer people to you. Like that's your honeypot. Like maybe even more so than the people who are currently in the position, maybe frustrated because it's a stressful time or whatever. The people who had a great experience and have moved on. That's amazing. Thank you for backing me up on that, sis.
It's the same thing with customer acquisition, right? It's why you want your customers to be happy. Like anybody advocating for you and your brand is invaluable.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so, and it is so aligned. It's like how you acquire market share and how you maintain your customer base. And it's the same philosophy for your team. It's the same thing, just handled a little bit differently. Before we wrap up, I've got 2 more questions. One that I always ask at the end, and in this one, if I want to be in tech, or maybe I'm just getting started in tech, what opportunities are available for women, and especially minority women, in technology? And if there are these opportunities, why do we still see so few female faces in the space?
Yeah, that's a loaded question, but I definitely think that there are always opportunities depending on what it is that you want to do, right? Whether it's marketing or learning technology or what have you. I think it's a couple things. One, the awareness of it. So as a hiring manager, I have learned over the years that just because you post a job on your website doesn't mean people have seen it, right?
Yeah.
So I have hired or placed job advertising at like historically Black colleges or in female groups or what, and you have to make a concerted effort to make your job available out there if you want more diversity in your hiring or more diversity in your candidate pool, at least. So you have to do that concerted effort. I think there are jobs out there for sure for women, but what I want to say to every woman listening that has self-doubt, stop being so self-doubtful. None of us know what we're doing. We're doing the best that we can. You just have to try. Like more than half the battle is showing up and trying, right? Yeah. And I think not being scared or being intimidated by the fact that, you might be the only one in a room, or you might be one of 2 people in a room. Like, it's okay. Just keep doing it.
Oh, girl, I am always the token female on stage. I mean, we have entire manels of male panel members. It's like you couldn't find a single female who might have an opinion on the topic that we're having this panel on. Like, really? And then like I'm the token female, like speakers all lined up, and I accept it. Like I do try to push back or say like, hey, I've got this other woman who's a rock star and maybe she'd be good for this conference as well. But the reality is, you have to get okay being the only one who looks like you in the room until you can start influencing how that room looks. But you can't influence until you get in it.
Totally.
Yeah. And I love that you're doing that. And I love, again, if you want a diverse workforce, it's just like marketing to gain market share. You have to market where people are hanging out. Right. Walmart and Ritz-Carlton are not marketing in the same areas. They're not advertising in the same areas. So if you're trying to attract diversity, then go into these groups and these online forums and, make sure that faces, not stock photos, but the faces of people who look like them are on your careers page. Make sure that your social media reflects that. I mean, it's simple and it's not. You just have to kind of take a step back and think like, well, what if I was this person? What would I need to see to feel psychological safety and belonging to make a choice to come to work for this company? All right, you ready for the last question?
Ready.
I ask it every single time. So as a reminder, a bombshell, we redefine the term: bold, brave, unwaveringly confident woman in business. Not unwaveringly confident because we wake up every single day like that and feel it all day long, but because when we fall down, we get back up. That's how we get there. What parting piece of advice would you give to any woman who identifies as a woman of any color who wants to be a bombshell or is on the bombshell journey?
Yeah. So this is one that was very difficult for me, but I have it on a Post-it note also right now. You're the only one that can give away your power. What I mean by that, let's say you're in a room, let's say you're getting crapped on and it's horrible. Yes, that experience is not great, but don't give your power away to those people. It's not worth it. Like think of your power as like a battery of like, is it fully charged? Is it not fully charged? You have to be really in tune with that, right? But don't give away your power to other people just because they don't see your value or just because they don't appreciate your skills, gifts, what have you. Like you're the only one that can give away your power. It's hard, but highly recommend it for anyone. That might be one of my favorite ones. I've been doing this podcast for over 6 years. That's probably one of my favorite ones. Thank you for that. Yeah. And I'm not one to necessarily do that, but there are seasons and I'm going to just put your smiley face in the back of my mind to pull that forward when I need to be reminded myself. I have it on my Post-it note. Here we go. I mean, you think I'm joking. Like I have these Post-it notes because sometimes you need a reminder. And there are times where, man, you're having a rough day and you're like, okay, what part of this do I own? What part am I giving away my power? And just think about it. I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing your journey, for being so vulnerable, for giving sage advice, and for being on the show. I am a better person for knowing you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This was really fun. One of my favorites. Oh, good. Yay. Well, we'll have to keep in touch for sure. And Bombshell, your time is super valuable. I know that you are being pulled in a million different directions, especially at the time of this recording. And I know I speak for Martha as well. Like we get you, we know that you've chosen to take this time with us and I treasure that. So in order to help other bombshells find this show and awesome guests like Martha, please make sure that you subscribe, that you share this with somebody who needs to hear about not giving away their power and tapping into their grit. Make sure that if you're on YouTube that you like it, leave an honest rating and review on whatever listening app that you have. And what that does is it just kind of like tricks the algorithm and it puts it in front of the eyes of the people who need it most. So that's how you can help another woman. And I would appreciate that as well to help us grow our reach. And other than that, I just want you to be the bad mama jamma that you are. Remember to keep that power, and I will see you on the next episode.